The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Is the 200th episode edition. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, you know him, you love him. He's been with us for 200 episodes. He can't be stopped. Tom, say hello.
Brought a tear to my eye. I'm amazed how well, that's obviously a quotable from the movie we're doing. I'm amazed how well that fit with your intro.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes.
One of the incidental pleasures of the Star Trek TOS series is watching the growth and contempt between James Doohan and William Shatner.
Oh, was it ever dripping in this movie? I can't wait to talk about it.
I know, it culminated in Star Trek Generations, their last on-screen moment together, where at any given moment they look like they're about to punch each other in the face.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is in fact our 200th episode, and we are going to go back to the well, as we did for our 100th episode.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk Star Trek Generations, the bridging film between the old and what was at one point was the new.
The entirely unnecessary bridge.
Yes, exactly.
Between the TOS and TNG eras, as we already established during our coverage of the Star Trek TOS series.
Correct.
And I guarantee we'll be talking about again when we get to the TNG era.
Yeah, exactly. Right off the bat, normally when we start a new series, we'll obviously declare.
Yeah.
In terms of ranking, we could rank it against, the movies we've already done, but we won't venture any further than that until we get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost tailor-made. It's almost tailor-made for these special episodes we do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I cannot decide whether this is a TOS or a TNG movie. I thought I knew.
I think.
And then I watched it this time. And then I watched it this time again, having just done the TOS movies. I was like, that's maybe more of a TOS movie than I ever gave it credit for.
Really? Because on this viewing, I kind of went the other way.
Well, then that's why we have something. There's our podcast right there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our mission statement: is that we have a disagreement. Talk about.
Exactly.
Which speaks to the reason why we picked this movie in the first place.
In the first place, I mean, it's the perfect bridge for us to go past 200.
Yeah,
let's face it. I mean, so I was thinking back because obviously. Our 100th episode, we went, we started back at the beginning. We did Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Because retroactively, upon having seen it, I remember thinking, no, this is absolutely a sequel. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of go back to the well, and we were thinking about where to go for a 200th episode, and...
any more unfinished business, and
this is it, isn't it?
This is. I think the synopsis of this movie could be unfinished business.
Oh man,
that is actually finished, but nonetheless,
yes, has it reeks of unfinished.
Yeah, it's just amazing to think someone walked out of the undiscovered country and thought, well, we're gonna need something to bridge,
something to wrap, something to lead into the next generation,
something stronger than seeing all the signatures of the cast in the final credits.
Yeah,
that doesn't
space.
Tell. Yeah,
in space.
That doesn't say closure to me at all.
To say, we'll get there, but it also, to say nothing of the fact that they kept asking people to join this movie who said no.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's very evident with when you see who walks onto the Enterprise bridge at the beginning of the film.
So very much
It
so.
is not the most natural trio
Right.
of TOS legacy cast members.
Yes. We've already alluded to the problems that that happen when you bring a Doohan back together with a Shatner.
Right, yeah, and also, I mean, we'll get into it, but I am fascinated by uh, just because they're currently involved in a feud. Um, Shatner and Takai,
Mm-hmm.
that were Captain Kirk's final words. Scoop George Takai's catchphrase before it was ever his catchphrase.
You know what I?
And I wonder whether the feud is largely based on this. That,
It could,
Takai is
right?
just
Yeah,
resentful of the fact that Shatner got there a few years earlier, because it was the Howard Stern show that launched Oh My.
yeah.
Putting Stern putting it on his soundboard. And very recently, Takai was on the Graham Norton show talking about both how he will not talk about William Shatner anymore, whilst also talking about William Shatner. Because Shatner has a book out in which he lays into Takai, not by name, incidentally, which is kind of interesting that Takai immediately assumes it's all a reference to him. I was like, are these guys? I mean, are these guys just both difficult? I get that.
Maybe.
I get
I
that
mean,
sense sometimes.
I find it interesting that a man in his 90s could
Yeah.
write a book and still be talking shit about someone
Yeah.
that he worked with for decades.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. But so
When you hit 90, you're towards the end.
Mhm.
It's time to think about the good stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
Instead of putting in print your grudges.
as far as I can, tell, Shatner keeps just talking about how TOS cast members in general, whereas Takai will hit back with Shatner
Yeah.
went to space because they wanted to see what an unfit subject how they did out there. It's sort of like, well, one is very personal and directed, the other one is
Yeah, right.
But then on the flip side of that is, I think one of the best pitches we had in the last 100 episodes was actually not a sequel pitch, but an inadvertent pitch for a game show that you made called Who Hates Shatner More? So when Shatner refers
I
to
forgot about that.
when Shatner refers to the TOS cast members that he's feuding with, it's a pretty broad church of people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Whereas Takai is sort of like, no, it's just Shatner. I got on with everyone else.
But this guy's a real asshole.
Yeah.
Well,
I also have some questions about how Allegiance made it to the stage. I have inside information that George Takei may not be the original author of that piece, so
no.
maybe that biases me. But
I was gonna say
after our experience with James Franco, I don't want to push our legal our legal troubles any further.
let's leave them where they are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think for our 100th episode, we did some reflection.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you again. How do you feel as we embark on past 200 episodes?
He says, not realizing he's quoting Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Unless he is. But it didn't sound like it.
Nope.
How do you feel? And I'll just respond with that bird-like Leonard Nimoy face.
Yes, right.
How do you feel? I feel really good about where we are. I was looking back at our catalog for the last 100 episodes, and I was just struck
me
by
too.
how many big series we've tackled in that time. The entire Halloween canon thus far.
Right.
Rocky, the Planet of the Apes series,
Planet of the Apes, Dirty
Terminator,
Harry,
Star Wars, and Star Trek. I mean, these are series that are formative, important, and Hall of Fame.
Yeah, historically,
Yeah.
they matter.
Yeah, and one or all of the above for many of them.
Right.
But I'm also glad we've managed to sort of fit in a lot of our single sequel
Yeah.
um entries, because it's just fascinating to take a year
Take a
aside.
snapshot of a year. Yeah.
Yeah, take a snapshot of a year and see what it tells us, and it's
Talk to
huge.
me, 1997.
Yeah.
You have plenty to say.
And 1990, yeah, exactly. We got 93 and 97, and the whole art of sequel filmmaking seems to have died in between those years.
You take a look at 93. Good job, 1993.
I think
97. Woofa.
Weekend at Bernie's 2 was the nail in the coffin of film sequels, apparently. So whichever way you slice it, I think it's been fascinating, and I love that we're able to approach it from different angles. But I mean it puts you in an interesting position, because you're like, what's next? What could be next? Mm-hmm. I mean it also, with many of these series, we've only done them in part. Whether it's the Spider-Mans or the Star Wars or even the Star Trek.
Yeah, right, sure.
We've got more to go, so there's also the ability to kind of run with a few series.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, more sequels will be made within a given series that will allow us to update.
Go on. Yeah, apparently we're gonna have to revisit the Dirty Dancing series.
What? That's news to me.
Really?
And new Dirty Dancing sequel?
As I understand it, yes, Jennifer Grey is coming back.
And Patrick Swayze was too dead to object. Is that how it came about?
Maybe just as a final insult for you, I hope they have some sort of hologram version of him.
Well, I mean,
dancing on stage.
I think I mentioned this in the last episode. I forget why, but within the, not to date the podcast as we somehow find a way of doing, even though it goes against our better judgment. The trailer for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, I watched it.
Which is it the 5th installment in the Indiana Jones cycle, came out in the past week, and it looks it's difficult to tell from any modern day trailer what the film's actually going to be, but it's going to involve, I would say, about 50% of the movie's going to be with a de-aged Harrison Ford.
Yeah, right, exactly.
If those Nazi uniforms told me anything.
Right, exactly. I thought the same exact thing. I started watching that preview and thought, what decade are we in?
Oh, so, no. I mean, everyone is adamant, everyone involved with it is adamant that this will be the last Indiana Jones film, so I will probably cover it
in the next 100.
Yeah, we'll cover it in the next 100, which will, I mean, that'll be another huge series to think about, and we'll I like that we're able to go way back, go in the Wayback Machine.
Mm-hmm.
With something like Planet of the Apes, but then also pull it right up to the present day with Halloween Ends, or it's nice to have a few new entries in.
You could say the same for the Planet of the Apes series. We're not done with that. There's more sequels.
No, there's a whole trilogy.
Yeah.
And I think they're still making them from the sounds of it. I think there's definitely more apes in the works.
You can never keep a good ape down.
You never keep a good ape down, and also, I mean, look, there's a kind of a flip side of our podcast, which is our YouTube content, which are currently split between a mini series on James Bond sequels and our regular watch-alongs, which we've been doing since the podcast began, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Like so many series have kind of come to us first through the watch-alongs.
Sure.
Like, Star Wars we started doing on there.
Mm-hmm.
And now we finally got around to doing actual Star Wars movies instead of these kind of bastardizations.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Of the Ewoks and the holiday special.
Yeah.
But we got a flavor of series like King Kong as well, and
sure,
stuff that
stuff that's certainly been around a long time. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Amityville, which
right,
we're never tackling.
Says you.
Well, this is it. I mean, it's always you feel like is it King Herod with the we'll cut the series down the middle.
Right.
And
if you really care.
Mm-hmm. And some series are so long and unwieldy, we have no choice but to do that.
Yeah.
And yet, even the act of cutting it down the middle is fascinating. I mean, look at the movie we've got today, Generations. It's
right.
It's a fascinating object in terms of how you take a film series from one era to another.
Well, I think
do's and don'ts.
Yeah, exactly. Because the interesting part about this particular movie is it begs as you watch it, it constantly begs the question: was any of this necessary?
And also, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
I have so many.
I
notes.
don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think they realized what a difficult task they set themselves for.
Yeah.
Before deciding to do it. It was one of those things where you think, we should absolutely do this, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Without contemplating about what a difficult task it would be. And one of the interesting things I read was that they had also just recently finished the series, Next Generation.
I mean, it was, they picked right up. I think they had like 2 weekends off or something crazy
right,
like that.
Exactly. And the funny part is the same writers, a duo of writers, I think wrote both, the finale for the series and this movie. And even they say, yeah, I think we were paying a little more attention to the finale of the series.
Well,
and this movie feels like that.
Well, having recently seen that, I think they forgot as much about that finale as they did.
Okay.
as they did remember it. So I mean, so it's fascinating. So many different there's so many different contradictions about this just massive series,
right?
That we'll get to tackle.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. It's hard. You know how it is. It's hard not to talk about Star Trek Generations when you've just seen it.
When you've just seen it, you have so much to say. But we have further information for everyone, sort of a state of the podcast.
Yeah.
And
yeah, the pandemic is over.
Right. And I guess you want to give the good news or the bad news first?
Oh, I don't think there's any bad news.
I don't think so either, but I know one fan in particular who feels miffed when he has to wait 5 whole days for a next episode.
Oh my god, okay.
So,
well, maybe we'll find a way of just of getting the next episode right to them.
I always think
on the end of the 4th night.
Well, I'll just say, friend of the show, Andrew Pangle, and avid listener and close friend as well. He said that to me, I don't know, a few months back. Man, it's always hard to have to wait like 5 days.
He must have loved those Star Wars episodes.
Yeah,
didn't even get to the end of the movie in one episode.
I thought for sure it was going to piss him off, and he thought, no, I really liked it. It was okay. I was okay with it.
Oh, okay.
But
I mean, it was a
my first thought,
a cereal for a cereal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my first thought when he said that was, how dare you? 5 days?
Wow.
That's not a lot of time to wait.
Well, yeah. So,
but
well,
I think we're gonna transition into most likely
yes,
an episode a week.
yes, one episode every.
We
7
have been
days.
going at a furious pace for a long time. 2 years.
Yeah,
over 2 years.
You know, I think we've been generous.
Yeah.
In giving you an episode every 5 days, and we've also been pretty loosey goosey about taking a week off in between series. So I would say going forward, expect...
Sometimes we only wait 3 or 5 days between series.
Right. You know, I would say expect no more than one episode a week, and expect us to take a week off between film series, whether that's single sequel years or franchises that we tackle. So we're going to be firm about that, but that is not because we want to produce fewer episodes. It's actually the opposite, and this is where the good news comes in. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this, but certainly
shortly there
in the not too distant future, yeah, so somewhere in the temporal nexus, where time does not exist, until it very much does.
Until it does.
We will be launching a Patreon for the Everything Sequel podcast, and our goal is to produce 1 to 2 bonus episodes for Patreon subscribers on a very regular basis. We won't pin ourselves down too much because this is all
new to us.
This is all new to us, and we're experimenting. But we're
hat in hand.
Yes, we're gonna establish a couple of membership tiers that will allow you to get up to 2 episodes on a regular basis, additional to the once a week regular feed posting. So you're not really losing anything, and you're gaining a lot. Is my takeaway from this. And
agreed.
We're gonna be we're gonna use the Patreon. It's obviously, for those of you who don't know, it's an opportunity for you to pledge some money to us on a monthly basis, and and that's that's basically sponsorship of what we do, but it comes with perks of bonus episodes,
material,
which we're gonna get to you in a timely fashion. The more you pledge, the more you get. So we won't be more specific than that because we don't know how it's going to go out, but it's very exciting. And obviously those bonus episodes are going to be something related to but different from what we do here on the podcast. And
correct.
I think
we have some good fun ideas.
Yeah, whatever we decide, I think you'll be happy with it, and maybe even pleasantly surprised about what we might come up with. Yeah, and that is literally all I can say about.
I have no further information.
Again, Generations is the perfect metaphor for this episode, isn't it? Because we're talking about something that has yet to happen, as if it has happened, in a movie which exists in both the future and the past simultaneously,
and the now,
whatever that is. In the Alan Ruck now.
Yeah. I really wanted to see him with a Gordie Howe jersey on.
It might be one of the Alan Ruck's character in this movie is sort of one of the few missed. Like, obviously, I've recently seen all of classic Star Trek series, and most of the time you're like, I don't never need to see that character again, or that actor, or both. Alan Ruck is one of those occasions I'm like, I'm happy for them to bring him back in any iteration.
Right.
Both the actor and the character. Wherever they want to put him.
Absolutely.
I'm up for it.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, do we have any more state of the podcast business?
I don't think so. No,
We've
thank you.
taken care of
I
everything
I
except
just
our thank yous, right?
Yeah, I just want to say and I just want to say thank you to everyone who has got in touch with pitches and
Yeah.
just general comments, and it's been lovely to hear from you. We always love to hear your perspective, and it always contributes to what we do,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it feel it's worthwhile getting in a closet and talking to Mike Chance for any reason. I mean, I did that before we had a podcast, you know.
Yes, of course.
I would just periodically get in a closet. And
Want to talk
you.
in the closet today?
Yeah, that's right. Because if you don't know, Mike is a Catholic priest, so I regularly confess to him. But
You are being misled down a terrible road, sir.
I know, and that explains where I am in my life right now. But so it's worthwhile anyway. But it makes it feel extra special when you get in touch and tell us how much the podcast has meant to you. And
some of those pitches have just been
and giving us content and news and ideas on where to go from here. And we listen to all of them. And all I say is, if we don't do them, we will, or we can't. Like there is some kind of barrier.
Not yet.
Yeah, streaming availability is always an issue. But again, the Patreon I think will help with that, because if we're able to fund the podcast, we can be a bit more cavalier about spending money on the films we want to cover.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay.
So I won't. Except to say, I agree with Tom 100%. We just
Howard Johnson is right.
Yeah, exactly. That was great.
No, it's not quite a sequel, but it'll do. It was the first thing that jumped into my mind is Howard Johnson is right.
Howard Johnson is right.
Yes. Not only is it authentic frontier gibberish.
We appreciate and love all the listeners for, I believe, getting us past 14,000 downloads as of right now.
Oh, great.
And while we're at it, I'll go ahead and thank Transistor FM, who pushes our episodes out for us.
Thank you very much.
Always appreciated.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's good to know we're in safe hands in terms of the platform.
All right. Agreed. All right. Why don't we take a break? And
Thank
then
you
we'll
for
come
coughing
back.
into the mic.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I've got a huge frog in my throat.
I appreciate that BTS of you coughing directly into the microphone. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for more than anything else.
Just to remind you of where we came from, how this podcast started. The days where we would just any kind of bowel noise would just kind of make it into the sounds of dog collars shaking in the background.
Yeah, right. Yes. We have showers, we got pipes, we've got
showers and
garbage disposals.
Yeah. And we eliminated that not by improving our sound quality, but by removing all the plumbing in my building. And then I went over to your building and did the same.
And I thank you.
Yeah, well, you didn't at the time.
Pissed off my neighbors, but
yeah, I was gonna say you weren't crazy about it when I proposed it to you, but
I've gotten used to the bucket.
Yeah. Mike is living in his own kind of Qatari migrant worker reality at the moment.
All right, this isn't a contest to see how much shit you can pull, all right? Everyone, we're going to take a break.
Oh, and I've been severely misled about the content of this podcast, if that's the case.
When we come back, you're going to hear the 200th episode. We're talking Star Trek Generations.
Yes.
Very exciting.
That's not a reaction you hear often.
I know. We'll be back right after this.
Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here. Basically just starting with Star Trek Generations.
Like the movie, it's a reset.
Yeah, exactly. A 1994 film.
And also a sequel.
Directed by David Carson, who I'm sure you don't know.
I didn't.
He has directed nothing except television. I mean, and a lot of television, including Next Generation and other Star Trek series episodes. And, of course, the movie Unstoppable. No, not that Unstoppable. That's Tony Scott. I'm talking about a 1994 Unstoppable with Wesley Snipes.
Ooh.
Can I read something to you, Tom?
Please.
Unstoppable. Wesley Snipes is Dean. Dean has PTSD after a wet job gone bad in Bosnia. Waiting for his police girlfriend at a dinner, some bad guys inject him with a hallucinogen. It sends him back to traumatic experiences in Bosnia, and he reacts violently.
You lost me at wet job.
That's where exactly.
I didn't hear the rest of it because I was just thinking, what is a wet job? And why would that affect you in such a way? Yeah, well, the only kind of relevant title that I saw was From the Earth to the Moon, which is a documentary, but it's obviously in the same,
but a good one,
in the same sort of space exploration wheelhouse,
right? And it's funny. So David Carson, he's not a household name, but I found it interesting that because I read that the producers, the one thing they wanted to make sure happened with this movie, which I think bears out when you watch it, is they wanted to make sure it was made quickly.
Oh.
And they thought, well, television directors really have to work under a very strict schedule, so we should get a television guy to do it.
That's the lowest bar I've ever heard in my life.
Isn't that amazing?
That's narrowly above. We've got to make this before the rights expire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's the same. You've got the same. You've got the same journey, just a different goal.
You're right.
We got to make this quickly because the rights are expiring. Well, but this is actually no. I'm going to say this is even worse because there's no reason why you have to make this so fast.
Yeah, right.
Because as
chosen to.
Yeah, as you confided to me prior to recording, they took a couple of weekends off after finishing the finale of Next Generation.
Yeah.
And went straight into this. So you could have given them like a break.
I'll tell you this. I can almost relate because yesterday we had a big work party, go to a kind of, not a bar, but like a little beer and wine with some decent food and games, costumes, teams, kind of just celebrate our whole year together. Really appreciate you all. We all had just a fantastic time, which led to, a brewery after that, which led to a house party after that. And by 7 p.m., I just had to say, guys, I got to go home. I got to watch Star Trek Generations. I'm on a timetable. And this is, as I walk out the door of a raucous party, I thought, this is the life I've chosen.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, it's monastic, is what
Yeah,
it is.
right.
And so you're sparing it. You're kind of sparing yourself hedonism
Right, right.
in order to, I don't know, I was gonna say complete a phase of a film series, but that's already happened. So
Yeah,
I don't
it
know
was
what
complete.
This is. It was complete. It's a I mean, it is a transitional film.
What I'm curious about is
outwardly.
why do they think they need that transition? Why do they think people need hand-holding from the old to the new? You know, we just discussed that Next Generation had been around so long, the series had
Yeah,
ended.
7 years. Mm-hmm.
And if you loved that, you were going to go see a movie. And speaking as a person who was not a regular watcher of the Next Generation, and not even a regular watcher of the original series, I had to go back as an adult and just finally start watching episodes here and there.
And realize that not many of those episodes are any good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But if a Star Trek movie comes out, New Generation, original series cast, I'm going to go see it. You got me. Like, don't worry. I'm there. Maybe I'm not the best test case, but I'd like to think that there are plenty of people like me that were going to go see another Star Trek movie. And that kind of bears out. I mean, this movie had a budget of $35 million, opening weekend of 23.1 in the USA, kind of like a lot of these movies, right in the 70s. 75.6 million, 118 in the world. So this middling weirdo movie still made money.
Middling weirdo movie.
And it even got
that is the best description. I mean, it would also be a great description of the film's villain.
Yes, absolutely.
Malcolm McDowell's Dr. Sora, middling weirdo.
Yes. This movie even managed 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, which seems like a miracle to me.
Yeah, so here's my thoughts. After we went through the Star Trek TOS film series, we talked extensively about how the Undiscovered Country was the perfect ending.
Yeah.
So I thought watching Generations again, in light of that, I would enjoy it far less. And I absolutely acknowledge that this is neither the way to end the TOS era or begin the film era of TNG. Nonetheless, and I really am at a loss to tell you why, this film still gives me the warm and fuzzies. Which is extra weird, because I have no nostalgic attachment to it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in 94 when it came out. I have only recently finished The Next Generation within the past year.
Right.
So there's nothing about this film necessarily that I should have any emotional feelings about. And yet every time I watch it, and especially this time, I get a little sentimental, and I don't understand why.
So it's funny you say that because, well, I mean, it leads into what we should be also talking about that we haven't gotten to yet, whether or not this movie is good or bad.
Oh yes, okay, all right.
Because
yeah,
I have the same feeling that you do. Yeah. I'm really struggling with answering that question because.
Well, good. At the very least, I think that's where we should.
This movie, as stated before, this middling weirdo movie.
Perfect.
There's just no reason for it to exist.
Yeah.
It does not at all end anything for the original series in the way that we know Undiscovered Country did.
Well, put it this way. Let's take this from the other side as well.
Mm-hmm.
The TNG era would have been in a far stronger position if it had been following Undiscovered Country with First Contact.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
This puts the TNG era at a severe disadvantage before it's even
Before it even starts.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was just going to say. What I was going to say was that it feels like doing this movie handicaps the next
Yep.
generation.
And also kind of retroactively spoils a little of the,
Yeah,
completism
of course.
Undiscovered Country.
Yes, of course. And then the funny part is that, unlike you, I did see this in 1994.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of, I have literally not seen it, I don't think, another time until last night.
Yeah.
And
okay,
yet...
wow. I've seen this a good few times
Really?
at this point. Yeah.
If I'd seen it another time, it's not more than once.
Mm.
So maybe this is my third time.
Yeah.
And yet, I still have a little warm and fuzzy. I have some notes that are like, oh yeah, I remember that from 1994. I really liked that.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. The only kind of quality of the film that I can attach my attachment to is, and this might have something to do with having seen all the classic Trek in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Up to this point in Star Trek, the casting has been immaculate.
Yeah, right.
From Deep Space Nine onwards, it's very hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Deep Space Nine is a very strong show, but some of the performances it's mixed.
Okay.
I think the cast of Voyager is great, much better than Material. Enterprise is neither and both of those. So there is something about seeing a thoroughly well cast movie, even a movie that doesn't need to exist or make sense,
Yeah, right.
or really justify itself as a complete movie. Just the fact that everyone in it is so strong and so perfectly cast and putting in a really great performance,
It helps.
That almost does it for me. That almost makes me want to call it a good movie.
So I feel the same.
But I'm right there on the line, because it's such a flawed movie from premise onwards.
Yeah, it's deeply flawed. So I feel the same.
The execution is no better than the premise.
Yeah, right. And it's funny because I feel kind of Jekyll and Hyde about different things. I feel the same you do in terms of performance and actors.
Yeah.
I do not feel that way in terms of script.
No.
It feels as
script's a mess.
Yeah, it feels as though almost nothing happens in this movie. It feels as though the only two characters that really have an arc, which would be Data and Picard, and it feels like their arcs were sort of wedged in, it's like an afterthought.
Well, I would say, I'm 50% on board with that. I'd say that the Picard arc is manufactured, whereas, ironically, considering that he's
a human,
I think
and
Data's development is organically extrapolated from what we've seen in the series.
Okay, so that was my question for you.
And that the rest of the TNG era will actually sort of bring what they did in this movie to fruition. But that's really it.
I understood, because that was my question for you. I understood, because Data is artificial, that all makes sense. But the idea of the emotional chip, I couldn't remember if that ever had come up in the series or not.
Yeah, that helps and harms the film, because the emotion chip, the last we heard, it was destroyed.
I see.
So there's a bit of a retcon involved.
Okay.
But I would say the general trajectory of Data's humanity and emotional development, I think that all tracks. That is a through line through TNG, the series.
Yeah, that does very much.
And it goes into and it's a big part of the next few films. And
I agree with, but I also...
That's the only kind of organic, ironically...
Yeah.
Organic element of the story.
But there's a secondary part for me in which I feel Jekyll and Hyde again. In terms of direction in this movie, I think it's funny, at least for me, the front half of this movie feels like a Next Generation episode. It
Definitely
feels like TV. And
well.
from the second
And
half on,
yeah.
I noticed that I was enjoying this movie a lot more, and the movie itself felt much more cinematic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's a weird sort of.
And I could say the same
It
about...
It definitely becomes more cinematic as it goes
Yeah,
on.
and I could say the same about... I think the reason the intellectual argument you're making about Data makes sense, because I understand about his evolution within the series, and so taking that forward makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's not crowbarred in, but I also felt like his performance right after the emotional chip came in, and I don't know that it's Brent Spiner's fault. It might be a directing thing, but it's not.
No, it's Brent Spiner's fault.
It's not landing. It's not very good.
So here's the thing you need
but
to
it
remember.
Gets better later on.
Here's the thing you need to remember about Brent Spiner. When you ask him to do something that has the potential to be broad,
right?
It's a roll of the dice every single time.
Okay. That makes sense.
So, yeah. So, there are hits and misses, but that is consistent with the way Spiner has played the role, and overall, I think he's great. I think it's but
I always remembered him being some of my favorite stuff.
Definitely, and it is. But
when I was watching this movie, I was kind of taken aback by how much I did not like what was happening on screen.
He's just an actor that can pull a misstep out of his sleeve at any given point.
Okay.
Performance wise, and that's just the kind of actor he is. But I think he, overall, he absolutely does the character justice. I think you're right about that as well.
All right.
And which is why I never mind, I never mind it.
Oh.
So, we haven't...
I thought there was going to be more to it. I never mind.
No.
I thought you said
I've got nothing else to say about Brett Spiner.
All right,
Brent Spiner. So, yeah, I'm
So are you saying good?
I'm going to say, against my better judgment, good. It's, again, echoes of the Final Frontier. I
think I like Final Frontier a little more.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too.
So I think
I could absolutely call this a bad movie because it's at the bottom of my list.
Yeah, I think
so far it's below Final Frontier. Final Frontier is a better movie.
Yeah,
categorically, but which again that's not an obvious statement, is it? I mean,
no, right?
What most people,
because for me, Final Frontier was right on the edge. Yeah. Oh man, I think I lean towards bad. I really do. Yeah, but it's so close for me.
I think you should take the bullet for bad.
All right.
Because
and yeah, it would be at the bottom of my list too.
I'm gonna take the emotional cue. There's so many Star Trek references in those two words. I'm gonna take the emotional cue from the fact that I have a great deal of affection for this movie. And absolutely no reason why I should feel that way. As an indication that it is in some way a good movie. Because it's giving me no reason to feel that way, and yet, in spite of myself, I do. And I'm going to go with that instinct.
All right.
But, I as we go on, I think I'm going to substantiate it a bit more and say I can pick out some moments in it that I really truly like.
Yeah.
Really truly admire on a number of different levels. Mostly acting, but also, the script is a mess, but there are some good moments in there, and we put a really high, we put a high price on that when we did the TOS movies about how much character moments and beats.
Yeah, for sure.
And moments of great writing kind of made the difference, and I think they are in here, but they're just lost in the literally in the nexus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the temporal nexus is also the script of this film. as well
Yes,
as its
exactly.
main science fiction concept.
All right, well, we'll press on. One
Yeah.
of the first things I want to say is I'm not sure a CGI bottle of champagne has the emotional impact that the filmmakers think it does.
We're like two female roommates who've lived together too long, and our periods have started to sink. Because I have exactly the same notes. So, this is what I have.
My note
That
was close up on bottle, not inspiring.
Here's mine. That champagne looked better when it was far away.
Yeah.
It just reminded me, especially in 1994, how computer graphics were not conducive to real life objects.
Yeah.
Like you could do objects of scale, but anything that was like quotidian, like a bottle of wine or something, just looks really fake. It's a really strange start to the film.
It is odd. Yeah.
Let's not beat about the bush.
Because even the music is odd.
The Paramount logo is silent, which is weird. Yeah. Ominous music, which gradually rises in volume. That's a really anemic way to start a film.
I wrote down ominous music followed by abyss-like music.
Yeah. And, if you think about it in relation to TOS, it was just credits in space, wasn't it? Like, you just put the titles in space. Yeah. This feels like more of a concept piece.
Yes, exactly, right.
Champagne kind of floating through. And you don't know it's a bottle of champagne until it gets really close. And you're both going, oh, it's a bottle of champagne. And, that really doesn't look like a bottle of champagne.
I knew it immediately.
Okay.
But all I kept thinking was, it doesn't look good.
I thought maybe it was a probe that was going to endanger Earth in
Okay.
some way. But maybe that's more to do with the previous films.
Right.
I was also interested about how they did the billing. Like everyone's name fades in and out of the other, and it feels more.
Yeah, I made that note as well. Yeah,
an ensemble cast than because very much in the TOS movies you had your stars and then you had your supporting cast. There doesn't seem to be that distinction anymore, which it definitely feels like more like how TNG was as a TV show as well. And the TOS cast are reserved for the end of the titles, making it very clear that we're doing them a favor.
Yeah, right.
This is the TNG era proper, and we're doing these guys a little bit of a favor. I'd tell you the weirdest part of this weird opening is William Shatner as Captain James T. Kirk in scare quotes.
Yeah,
as if he's not really the character, and also who the fuck else would he be?
Right.
William Shatner as Abraham Lincoln. I mean, what is it?
As T.J. Hooker.
Yeah, I mean, that credit is so confusing. And then the champagne bottle smashes into the new Enterprise.
Yeah, and I also had this lingering thought of where was that bottle thrown out of?
Yeah,
it was traveling in space a long time. Like you really must have hit the mark pretty well. It could easily sail by if you
It's
such a silly
like everything in this
concept.
Film, well, that's it. Like everything in this film, if you think about it conceptually, it works. If you try and break it down from there, it is unfathomable.
Yeah, exactly.
I like. This is a nice. I liked. I'm sure this was a huge disappointment to most people that we weren't going directly into like the Picard Enterprise era. But
right.
I like the bait and switch here. It's like you expect it to be. We're going on the bridge of Picard's Enterprise, but the first thing you see is those TOS movie uniforms.
Well, and I guess because there's sort of a famous, in Star Trek or at the end of Star Trek 4. You have the remade Enterprise, and it's the Enterprise A.
Yeah.
And for fans of the show, I suppose they knew that Picard's was C. And so they wanted to, again, bridge the gap and show them what happened with B.
Yeah,
that's the generation before Picard.
Yeah, that's clearly the impetus here. I mean, I think this sequence does a number of things. There is that, you know, this bait and switch. It's a handover, but not the one we expect. Because it's Shatner handing the gauntlet to Alan Ruck's captain, who is not fit for the job.
Yeah.
Space paparazzi is my my next.
I have that note.
The Lobot man with the camera in his head. I mean, it's confusing how media works in Star Trek, and
Sure.
The news crew with the head cameras doesn't help one bit.
No, yeah, not at all.
That confusion.
Muddles it more.
There's a moment of direction I really like when Shatner, playing James T. Kirk, just in case you're wondering, enters onto the bridge in the scare quotes. I love the fact that that it's being made a big deal of in world.
Yes, right.
But it's dampened for us as viewers. Like,
sure.
if you contrast it to the way he enters in Wrath of Khan, you know, that's big silhouette against the blue screen.
Right.
And this is like, and that's and it tells you immediately this weird in between status he has on this new bridge. And let's face it, in relation to TNG.
Yeah, right.
Which I think is the point they're trying to make. It's like everything that Kirk is on this bridge of the Enterprise is what Shatner is to the Next Generation.
Sure, right.
And I think they get that across directorially really quite well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because he's just like,
and I think it's kind of,
you
know, once the shit kind of goes down, I think it's kind of fun and interesting to watch Shatner know what to do, but be bottled up by the conventions of the military industrial complex that he works in.
Yeah.
And he can't take over the ship until Alan Ruck says, hey, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I really could use some help. Yeah. And it's fun I think it's kind of fun to watch Shatner go through that.
I do. I think it's, it reminds me that whatever manifestation we see Kirk in these films, they always find an interesting emotional place for him to start them.
Yeah, right.
And this is another good one. It's like this is his bridge, but there's another captain. It's also, and just to, you know, add insult to injury, it's a captain who's not worth the title.
Yeah.
And what is nice about the sequence and the way it develops, is that Kirk has you get there's a level of fan service in that Kirk gets to be the captain of the Enterprise again, but even in this few minutes of screen time, he has to earn it.
Yeah, right.
It has to become a life or death situation that neither the ship nor the captain can cope with, and then they get the best, probably the best piece of writing in the whole movie. They get a chance, and this is done so badly in so much new Trek. They get a chance to put Kirk in the chair, the captain's chair, which is, of course, what everyone wants to see. He sits there for a second, and then he says, "No,
I can't do this. It's not." Yeah,
I've got a different, you know, and they paint a different dimension, which is that his heroism becomes that of self-sacrifice, not of captaincy.
Yes,
and you know, it's all and you know, bled into that is this idea of this is the movie where he hands over the captaincy, at least in cinema, to a different actor, to a different character.
But like you said, I think it's interesting
and this is
that
part
they
of
chose
the catharsis of that, isn't it? He has to accept that you know, he spent 6 movies taking back the captaincy of the Enterprise long after he was supposed to.
Yeah.
And this is the movie where they draw the line and say, no, this will
he
be
is
a
not,
passing of the
yeah,
gauntlet.
Exactly, yeah.
But he has to try it out first with Alan Ruck before he can do it first.
He's got to at least get his cheeks on the seat.
Yeah, and so as the best bit of writing in the movie, I think, because, and also, you know, and again, this is what modern franchise cinema gets so wrong. We're able to see him as equally heroic as we've seen him before, but in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you think about the equivalent, it's Spock at the end of Wrath
of Khan, right?
He's the guy who's always on the bridge holding it together.
Or it's
And now
even,
he's
it
like,
reminded me a little bit of the, obviously because this ends up being more heroic, but it also reminded me of Spock and Bones getting the torpedo together in Undiscovered Country.
yes.
You know, it has that
Yeah,
feel.
absolutely. So I mean, it's I really like the sequence, and I'm in two minds about whether they should have Halloween Resurrectioned it and sort of kept it separate from the rest of the film,
Mhm.
just let it be its own mini movie,
Mm-hmm.
because it's as an effective send off
Yeah,
of Kirk
right.
as the
Certainly the one
one they
they
actually
give
give
him
him in
at
the
the
movie,
end, yeah.
which I
Which they
like as well.
reshot for $5 million, by the way.
Ooh. Not that I particularly mind that either. I just, I was trying to put myself in the position of someone who's watching this for the first time, and I think I would be satisfied if this was how
Mhm.
they kind of, if this was the period they put on Captain Kirk's story.
Yeah.
I would have been happy with it. I'm also happy with how fast we get out of space dock, which is I think about as fast as it's ever happened. And also, but we're also reset. This is the weird thing about this movie is we're also we're trying to move into a new era, but we're also resetting to the beginning of the TOS era, because the Enterprise is back on a training mission with a crew.
Yeah, right,
with
right.
like a novice crew, which is exactly how Wrath of Khan begins.
Yeah. And with
that's very
with an
deliberate.
Enterprise that isn't fully equipped or fully working.
I think it even goes back a little further to the motion picture with the sort of reprise of the transporter tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
where Scotty says, I only managed to get 47 out of 150.
Yeah, right.
And I immediately put to mind those weird transporter monsters from
Motion Picture. And, speaking to what, this movie's supposed to be a bridge, and, well, obviously it's supposed to introduce the next generation cast, and it's 18 minutes before we even see any of them.
With the exception of Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes, that's true.
Who is the most obvious. She was obviously going to be a part of this movie. One, because it's a time travel movie, and that was Guinan's. Guinan was the go-to time travel character in Next Generation, and it's also Whoopi Goldberg. She's a big name actor,
sure.
So it was a no-brainer that this film was going to sort of focus on her. So yeah, I guess you couldn't get away with it being a mini movie, because I guess Guinan could be just the only connective tissue because her species lives so long. It would make sense for her to be there. Yeah. But also, the villain is introduced in these scenes as well.
Right.
But we don't know at the time that. I mean, we get a sense because it's Malcolm McDowell.
Sure.
That he's going to be in the rest of the movie. But there's nothing narratively that holds us to that at this point. And also the fact that this is a like Kobayashi Maru for the retired Starfleet captain.
Yeah, right.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like can you be a retired Starfleet captain? This is the no-win scenario. He has to sit there and watch a younger captain fuck things up.
Right.
And it's like,
talk about no win.
The exact right point to intervene and then go off and die. I mean, it's like.
And this was one of the things
fantastic.
I always remembered too, when the ribbon takes out the chunk.
Nexus.
Yeah.
Say its name. Say its name.
When it takes out a chunk of the front of the Enterprise. And in a movie where there a lot of times I don't think the effects are up to par.
No.
But when you have that section come out, they realize that Kirk was there, and they
Salsa section. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh sorry. No. I'm jumping the gun. Carry on.
Well, and they go down there, and you hear, I think, Sulu's daughter say that the shields have been restored. And just the idea that they could be, on the ship and looking out and seeing outer space, but they're safe. And then they have that sort of shot as it pans by. I remember that shot from 1994. Yeah. I always remember thinking, that's cool. I like that shot.
Yeah, and this unsurprisingly, I think this section of this I don't know, prologue of the movie that really kind of sticks with me. Didn't even mention Sulu's daughter.
Yeah. Because there's a
I mean,
there's a
there's a moment.
there's
There's a moment
already-
of there's a moment of surprise,
uh-huh.
and for a second you think it's gonna be because everyone thought Sulu was gay, and then then it's like, oh, it's because it's like, how did he have the time to do this? All right, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But what I like too is that I think it's Doohan, I think it's Scotty that says introduces, well, not introduces,
Oh, I think
but
it's Chekhov
is it?
who introduces them. Yeah.
And he said, and one of them says, yeah, he's got a lot of interesting stories about Captain Kirk. And you felt like maybe they're talking
Yeah.
about off-screen shit.
He certainly
Right?
does.
But nothing is more delightful. I guess, is it delightful? I don't know, but like watching
I think so.
watching Kirk look at Doohan, looking at Scotty,
Yeah.
and really giving it to him in that moment of I can't even remember what it was he says. What's he say to him where he says it must be so nice for you to comment or it's a good thing you're an engineer with tact
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
And you just get the sense of like how much they fucking hate each other.
Really, yeah. It's such a meta sequence in so many different ways. Also the fact that at one point he says, "Beam them out of there, Scotty," which I think is as close as we get to saying the famous line that no one ever says from Star Trek, "Beam me up, Scotty." I think that's what Star Trek Generation pushes it as close to like public domain Star Trek as you could get.
That's great.
And there's a sense that they're cranking out all the classics while they can. They talk about the photon torpedoes as if they mean as much in world as they do in fandom.
Right.
It's like the actors are. It's like even the actors are aware of how tropey this all is. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a really effective sequence.
Yeah, I agree.
And I understand. Like again, I understand why people might find it disappointing, but I do think it needs to be there.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, once you decide to make the movie, yeah.
Once you decide to make the movie, yes. And I think it's skillfully done. And I like the acting within it, particularly Shatner and Rook, who I like the idea that not every Enterprise captain over history is
the greatest. Yeah, captain. Yeah, right.
Because that also, to me, by default makes Picard more interesting, right? And if there's still fans out there who don't see them, they can't see Picard as an
equal
natural successor to Kirk,
right.
or an equal to Kirk. I think this would help because we'd be like, well, the
look what it could have been.
It could have been
Cameron.
Yes, or Alan Rook's character from Succession, which is basically
right. Yeah,
this guy is.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, why don't we take another?
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
We're back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing for our 200th episode Star Trek Generations, the 1994 film directed by no one knows.
Not Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah,
Exactly. Which is the
Which
director
is what will
you
happen
expect
after,
it to be.
yeah. Sorry, David Curson.
Yeah. It has some good moments.
It does. And what,
directorially.
like, this front scene I think is good, and there's another one in particular that I really like.
There's another one.
Yeah, there's at least one more.
There is another. Wrong franchise.
Wrong franchise.
So, let's go. Let's pick up with the most confusing. Unless you have anything to say about Kirk's not exit from the show, from the
No.
from the movie.
Yeah, I think I said everything I wanted to say.
Yeah. One of the most confusing time jumps I've ever seen in a film.
Right.
78 years later, but we're on a seafaring enterprise, which appears to be sometime in the 17th century.
Yes.
You really this is where, like, this is that moment where you realize that they've been making TNG for so long. They think that this is another episode of the series because you really need the holodeck backstory, right?
Right,
If you're coming
yeah,
into
exactly.
this cold, you'd be seriously confused as to why we're on a boat.
My
in the
other
past.
note is this feels like a lot of rigmarole for a promotion.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that they have the holodeck, but they're costumed.
Talking to you, what I'm starting to realize about pretty much every aspect of this film is that it's a lot stronger conceptually than it is
Visually?
in
Or
in execution. Like,
yeah, right.
yeah, because I get what they're trying to do here. Like, Worf is in chains. He's about to be executed in this, pretend whatever promotion. And that is all about, excising the TOS Klingon human conflict.
Right.
The fact that this is all just a ruse and that he's actually getting promoted shows that we've surpassed that way we think about the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
We're still apparently willing to use them as stock villains whenever necessary, which
I gotta tell you,
undoes that. But,
I totally forgot about Klingons in this movie.
And we said that about Final Frontier.
Right. So I was fascinated that you have this front scene and then bring them back as villains, but I
Right.
guess they thought they were being.
We need a movie of Klingons.
Yeah, right.
So, Final Frontier, they were shoehorned in. Undiscovered Country was all about the Klingons. This film already will have Worf in it by its very nature. We do not need Klingon villains.
Right. I think they thought they were being more progressive because they were women.
Well, they're legacy characters from the series as well.
Okay.
I suspect that you might be right about that. I suspect their priority was more. We think that these are fan favorite characters. I don't know.
Right.
I don't think that's true. But
Right.
I think that's what the writers thought. It's like, these are the first people you'll want to see come back into the fold. Yes, and he's been promoted to lieutenant commander. So they're sort of developing from the finale of TNG, just like the TOS did with their movie series. Yeah, I think this is about, like, never underestimate a Klingon, putting all the past prejudices to bed. It's trying to kind of this is contradictory in relation to TNG because we're trying to move on from the end of the finale, but we're also reintroducing everyone, and there's a reset to the way the characters were at the beginning. It's interesting because, interestingly, and this can't be a coincidence, the first time we see Picard, he's the sea captain,
Right.
and when Patrick Stewart met Gene Roddenberry to talk about the character of Picard, he handed him the book of Hornblower. And said, everything you need to know about the characters in there. And that was it. That was the entirety of their meeting. And Patrick Stewart said, that was that was amazing. Like,
Oh wow,
'cause
interesting.
it gave me the freedom to build the character, but told me like what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
And he's Horatio Hornblower. I think
right.
like specifically in this opening scene. So there's like a, and and they make references to Riker's womanizing and that he cooks, and this is all sort of like re-establishing characters that we already know while simultaneously trying to move them along,
Yeah,
like develop them past the last time we saw them. So it's a really weird mix of characterization. And
interesting.
quite frankly, Picard's family tragedy doesn't help
No, yeah.
resolve this contradiction, because I think this is a threefold move by the writers.
Mm.
By having his nephew and his brother die in a fire at the vineyard.
Right.
I don't know, the grapes were too flammable. I don't know what can happen. But I think
Global
first of
warming
all,
finally caught up.
they reset Picard to how he was at the very beginning of TNG, like extremely emotionally repressed, because now he's got to be a captain while this tragedy has happened.
Yeah.
And he's got to pretend that he doesn't have emotions, which is the original Picard. Before, he got developed over 7 seasons
Right.
of television.
Yeah. Exactly.
But that also plays into that contradictorily, because you get to see him cry and express emotions, which is something they would never do with the
I did
OG
have a note here that I
like
thought he
pilot
was
Picard.
doing the best crying acting possible with some of the worst dialogue.
Yeah, he's so good. I mean, it makes makes the soap opera.
I
work
really
when you have
couldn't.
someone
I
like-
couldn't believe that he
Yeah.
was, was able to take it that far with the dialogue he was given.
And that's why casting matters.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Why it does. There's times in this movie where it really elevates it above the material. And I think that with the third thing, I think is they want to make him a character. They want to make him a character ripe for cinema in exactly the way they did with Kirk in Wrath of Khan, because they have Picard come into this film questioning aging and mortality because of what's happened.
Yeah, right.
And I think this threefold maneuver is what they're trying to do with the character of Picard at all times. Unfortunately, these will rub against each other
Right.
moving forward, because you can't have these three trajectories of characterization all happen at once.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what they were trying
I
to do.
think that's what they. Yeah, right.
And like you say, the fact that Patrick Stewart gives it as good a go as possible,
Right.
But even an actor as fantastic as him can't convey that all at once.
Mm-hmm.
However, Malcolm McDowell can really you can accept any level of characterization from him. And he's back. He comes back, and that's the first indication, isn't it? That's like, oh, this is all going to be part of the same story.
Yeah, right.
And he's also the same race as Guinan. So they're using her. He's evil Guinan, basically.
Yeah, sure. Bizarro.
You like you said about the emotion chip.
I had to note that it's way too easy to take the top of his head off.
You know what the best thing about that is, when you watch through TNG, it's a different orifice every time.
Really?
Every time they open Data off, it's coming out of a different place. I think eventually they settle on the head,
That's funny.
but you can basically turn Data on and off through a variety of orifices.
That's great.
It seems. So at this point, we're trying to mention a lot of legacy elements of TNG.
So I obviously
Data's
had the
pet.
sense that the cat was involved, but I honestly could not remember in what way.
Yeah, he has a cat for most of TNG. They also mentioned that there's a Romulan threat, which, I mean, TNG they were the Klingons of TNG, the Romulans. They were the sort of most recurring villain. But it's kind of quite interesting because, they're reintroducing it all at the same time. So you don't need to have seen TNG to sort of figure out that both of these are
Right.
ongoing characters and storylines. But they'll recap it for you fairly
Yeah, there's a lot of
succinctly
interesting
as they
stuff
tell you
happening. I
about
mean, you're
it.
getting some character stuff, but I have some notes that I thought it was interesting. For instance, that Picard's looking at a photo album, and obviously this movie's made in 1994,
Hmm.
so they did not really predict the digital age, and
They always get away with that from Picard because
yeah,
they've
right.
established that his family was kind of backwards. That they were trying to live a sort of 19th century life with the whole vineyards, and they hadn't technologized the vineyards,
Anything you
so you could
want.
literally get away with
Yeah.
any kind of antiquity in Picard's hands. Yeah, but what was also interesting about that is you tend to think of this movie as sort of dispensable in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the overall Star Trek mythology. Um, but he mentions that his ancestors were
Yes.
involved in the Martian colonies, and this is this is something that they're still turning lines like this into Star Trek TV shows
Mm-hmm.
because that's the basis of Picard season 2.
That's great.
That one line. Also, plenty in that photo album contradicts everything in Picard season 2, but still, it's interesting that they run with certain things and don't run with other things. They call out the pilot of TNG. Geordi and Data talk about
Mm-hmm.
something that happened during the Farpoint mission.
Yeah, because
Pointing
that's
out that it was
one
7
of my
years ago. So
this joke's not working.
Well, this joke's not working, but at least the bad jokes and
Yeah,
puns
right,
are
right.
part of the psychological storytelling. I mean, there's a lesser film that would just shoehorn
Mm-hmm.
those kind of jokes and puns in anyway without it being part of Data's emotional development. It's quite funny to see Brent Spiner purposefully doing bad comedy because of the many times he has just done bad comedy.
I also have a note here. He's really
and
is.
Geordie's
Yeah,
a great
that's
straight
true.
man,
He's a great
as
straight
he was
man.
in the series.
I have a note here that for about 15 or 20 minutes, David Carson must have been pals with Sam Mendes because this movie gets really yellow.
It gets really yellow.
As we're introduced to Soren,
Yes. Well, and what do you
just
think
struck
about
me as funny.
what do you think about Sauron? Because my thought is that this is
So
the last TOS film series style villain that we will ever see in a Star Trek.
Well,
movie.
what's interesting to me is because we're kind of talking about this movie on the same level as, or well, maybe not on the same, but there are two detracting movies, 5, and this movie that people seem to think maybe they're the least of all of them, right?
Right, and Dr. Sauron, I have the note, is very cyborg.
And so that's what I was gonna say. That my note is he feels very Cybok. They feel right at the same level of villainy, in which they're.
You could see a world in which Malcolm McDowell played Cyborg,
And yeah, you could switch them out.
and whatever he's called, Lawrence Lucky Charm or whatever his name is, plays Dr. Sauron.
Right.
Yeah.
But they feel on the same level character-wise. They're villainous, but they're not despicable. They're not filled with hate and rage. They're not,
Yeah. There's he's got a sympathetic backstory.
Yeah, he
which is also reminiscent of Khan. He's doing the wrong things but for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I don't know the right reason. Yeah, that maybe
Well, if you thought that
this guy's imploding 2 stars, killing everything that's nearby just to go back to whatever was his happy place.
Yeah. I was thinking more of whether that was accurate about Khan, but I think it's more accurate of Khan because from Khan's perspective, Kirk killed his wife.
Yeah.
So, but here his wife died and he wants to see her again.
I guess.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy, as with everything in this film.
But what do you make of McDowell's performance overall?
It goes between camp and one note.
Yeah,
I don't know
mean,
what
it's
like. There are times when I think it's kind of, by this point in his career, he's done so much kind of. Obviously Malcolm McDowell, Clockwork Orange,
yeah, sure.
Oh Lucky Man, Britannia Hospital. He's capable of these great iconic cult performances.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also, I think, post Tank Girl, or is it pre Tank Girl? Or he's basically done a lot of B movie
close
shit
to it
as well.
Yeah,
but a lot of B movie Hollywood shit. And so there are times when I think it's got to the point where he can do something that's enjoyably camp, but there are times when he's just literally phoning it in as well.
Yeah, right. I had the same
and it
kind
goes
of notes.
between them. I like his interaction with Geordie. Nothing really to do with him, but the idea that he's as offended by how anachronistic Geordie's visor is as about setting him up as a spy on the Enterprise. He's just like, there's a hint of get this visor off him. It's not 1987 anymore.
Right.
So I kind of like that that exchange, but yeah, it feels like it's like a if you were to write the blueprint of what a TOS film or episodic villain would be,
it'd be this guy.
Dr. Soren would be like the working title
for
the character that they would put up on the whiteboard.
On the board.
And it's like, we'll come up with something later, but let's call him Dr. Soren.
Let's call him this. Yeah, right.
And in some ways it's a tribute to that, but it's too generic, too much of a trope to be outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's not. It doesn't feel like he's necessarily facing off with either Kirk or Picard in the same way that.
Well, and that's one of the problems with the third act of the movie, but
yeah,
because we
got some tag team wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it feels like. Even the movie itself has lines like, "Who the hell are you?"
It's really interesting. Having said all that, having had that scene with Worf and going to a great deal of trouble to sort of put the Klingon mythology to bed. Klingon
what I also think is funny
decloaks out of nowhere.
Yeah, right.
At this point, and it's like more needless Klingon and cloaking, needless Klingons and needless cloaking.
Cloaking is part of their deal, Tom. I mean, you're just gonna have to accept it.
But it was never this much part of the deal. I think later on in the movie, there's even like a missile is cloaked.
Yes.
And it's like, come on, guys, you've got to break free from some of these tendencies.
Well, you've mentioned it before, the tendencies that start early on, that we see, most specifically destroying an Enterprise.
Well, this movie continues that trend as well,
right?
In a dangerous direction. Yeah, this is where. So I mean, Data's crippled with fear,
right?
Which is kind of, it's like a hokey premise, right? It's sort of like exactly the moment you need Data to, who by the way is pretty much invincible,
right? Yeah.
Which is something that they're always writing against because there's no drama in him being able to beat anyone at any time. So this is a kind of hokey premise, but I feel like good TV writers, they're able to interweave multiple storylines quite well. And so it's kind of nice that this is the moment at which Data sort of breaks down and that allows Soren to escape.
Yeah.
I think it's like, okay, that's quite a good... But, I mean, it's very TV.
That was my complaint about it. I was sniffing a little bit just because it felt so episodic as opposed to...
Oh, absolutely. Well, and then the Duras sisters, hoping the audience will whoop at seeing them again.
So, and it's funny because I don't know them. I must not have seen any of those
they're not in that much
episodes.
TNG,
okay.
and there will be in no more Star Trek,
Right.
thanks to this film.
Well, thanks to this film and footage from Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Right.
But that's one of my, I really like that whole section.
Oh, okay. Which section?
The fight. I like the. I mean, well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, so maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But in terms.
Oh, you talking about the submarine drama? Or...
Yeah.
Yeah. That I mean, again, I think that is that the writer. They're sort of let's think of them as the TNG writers are also TOS fan writers.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
They're probably people who've written Star Trek fan fiction before, and so obviously when they get a chance to do their Star Trek movie, they're gonna have a submarine drama scene in the style of Balance of Terror or Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, right.
And they do it pretty well.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I love the
the
decloaking, the shields coming
foolproof,
down. You get the
yeah.
number one fire.
It's even good in Final Frontier. That's how foolproof.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just, and then that's authentic Gene Roddenberry. That was his vision for the series.
You know what I think sells it too is actually the two actors playing the Klingon women, because when they realize how much they've fucked up and that they're gonna die, and there's that look, on the screen of just the two of them, center frame. It's great. They're so good.
Well, and also they get to poke fun at the expense of TNG the series as well, because at one point they comment on Geordie's the only engineer who is never in engineering, which
that's funny.
Like they're poking fun at their own writing tropes. Having him being a part of the bridge crew when he really should be in engineering by all intents and purposes. I mean, a lot of real estate spent on Data's emotional growth, and this is an indication, and we'll see this going forward, that the film, even more so, I think, than the TV series, it was a pretty big deal in the TV series, are fixated on Data and Brent Spiner as an actor.
Sure.
Like, he's still playing character. He's still playing antecedents of Data in Picard season 2.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he has been in this entire TNG timeline.
Right.
And the films, I think he was involved. I think he co-wrote at least one of we'll see when we get there, one of the TNG movies. So, but it was interesting to me that Generations is like, this is what we're pinning the films on.
Right, yeah.
Rather than Patrick Stewart, which is, I think, also kind of interesting.
Well, I think they thought they were doing a same level kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess they have that key scene together, don't they? Which is just like your average Star Trek planning scene with a lot of emotional angst, transplanted onto it.
But yeah, that was really the first moment I got invested and interested in his emotional chip. Was when he's talking to Picard about it, and Picard.
It's a bit more low key in that scene, isn't it?
Yeah, and Picard had to lay down the line.
I can't concentrate. My friend is in trouble. I can't concentrate.
Right.
And this is like pilot Picard is just like. It's like, stiff upper lip, come on. Yeah. We do this all the time.
But then he also takes the time to say,
yeah,
this is how human beings work, and you're going to,
once he
gets him to refocus.
Yeah, because he's also the Picard who has, finally sat down and is playing cards with the crew.
There you go.
So he's both simultaneously, and I think that again is we get so many different versions of these characters based on the different... drives at certain moments of this film, and all of them are interesting. They just don't all belong in the same movie or in the same characterization.
Right. And we're I don't know, maybe we jumped ahead, but because he also has he has that conversation with Guinan.
Yeah, no, I think we're about.
Is that where we are?
About there. Is this the the one that takes place in the real world, or when she's sitting on a carousel?
In the real world, yeah, right.
Okay.
So when in the
I
real
know
world,
she's in that in-house carousel.
when she's in the real world and explaining
Yeah.
that this is you don't want anything to do with this, you don't want to go there, you'll never leave there, you're staying there forever because it's your happy place, and just avoid it at all costs. Let him do what he's gonna do, or maybe does she say that? I can't even remember.
What did she say? What?
When she's talking about Soren, I guess I can't remember if she said just let him go, or if she was like you have to stop him at all costs, or was it neither?
The fact that I don't remember probably says it all.
Yeah, that's
about
true.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he's but it's the scene with Data where he realizes that it's kind of taken out of his hands because this guy's gonna destroy a world.
Yeah, right.
So it's not even a question. I think that they write their way out of him having to make that decision because he's bound by being a Starfleet captain to save those lives. Although, quite interestingly, I feel like no one mentions the Prime Directive because these are pre-warp civilizations, and if you're going by the letter of that law,
You're right.
he should be leaving this alone and just saying it's part of their natural development. If we interfere, we're gonna affect their the evolution of the solar system. So it's kind of
That's interesting.
They're kind of there's moments like that throughout this movie. I think there would be much more debate about whether or not they would kill Dr. Soren at the end of this movie, as opposed to just blowing him up without a second thought.
Yeah.
I think that is where TNG the series and TNG the film series part ways, I think.
All right.
But again, he's saying we're returning to the themes of the TOS movies, particularly Wrath of Khan, when he says in that conversation, it's our mortality that defines us.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that could have been straight out of that scene between Kirk and Bones, right? At the beginning of Wrath of Khan. And I like that thematically that's where
there's a through line.
They still are. And that's what makes it's elements like that makes it feel more TOS than TNG.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, friend. Well, why don't we take another break and then we'll come back and finish up. Today's episode is brought to you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
stay on target
and check out the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we're back again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Star Trek Generations, that 1994 film that nobody can figure out why they made.
Yeah.
So
it's like a reunion film before anyone had a chance
yeah,
to,
right.
like, not see each other.
That's a perfect way of putting it, frankly.
Yeah, it kind of is. And I mean, and it also, if you put it in historical context, Shatner's like 3 years away from Undiscovered Country.
Right, yes.
That's not a long time not to be playing Captain Kirk.
Yeah, exactly. That's the normal space of time between most sequels.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, when last we left, we were kind of talking around this, this big fight battle scene between the Enterprise and the Klingons. And, I mean, we talked around it, but was there anything else for you within that battle? Because, like I said before, for me, Like, this is when the movie gets really good. This is when Star Trek is starting to feel like Star Trek, and I'm really digging that scene.
And a big part of that for me is some of the story choices they make at this point, to make it feel more like old school Star Trek.
Right.
Namely, beaming Picard down to the planet.
Right.
Not only does he get to sort of shuffle around a few rocks, which is classic TOS TV series, Riker, who is, closer to Kirk in leadership style,
yeah, right.
it gets to be in charge of the Enterprise. So effectively, we get like a Kirk surrogate on the bridge,
because we even get that moment of fire.
Yeah, and I mean, the zoom in and the fire, and nobody does that better than Jonathan Frakes.
It's good shit.
And put it just by sort of taking Picard out of the picture for a few minutes. Deanna and Worf can sort of become useful on the bridge.
I was gonna say there is, a lot of the secondary characters past Data.
Yeah.
In this particular movie, we're not getting a lot.
It's really interesting to me, like when in the TOS era, the balance of supporting cast getting something to do was always pretty good. Some movies focused more on the central trio, like Final Frontier, but you always got a sense that would be rectified in a future
in the
movie.
Next one. Yeah, sure.
I mean, we'll talk about it, when we come to do these, do the Next Generation movies, but you never get that sense of an ensemble that you got in the TV show itself.
And the other thing I noticed was
particularly Worf, because he's not
right.
He's always moonlighting from his job on Deep Space Nine, so they have to have. So he's already like a bit of a stranger there.
Yeah,
and that's how the films treat him from this point onwards. But
the other thing I noticed was
something to do.
The other thing I noticed was that they don't feel as literary as TOS, or at least this one doesn't.
No, although I think there's a real Christmas Carol vibe once we get into the Nexus, and I don't
very
think
much.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that Patrick Stewart had
was
been
doing that.
Doing a Christmas Carol solo show on Broadway since '91, so like midway through Next Generation, and I think those are deliberate references. But yeah, apart from that, it feels. Well,
because in the other movies, they're even talking about literature.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but that's certainly a big difference. In this sequence, we also get some callbacks to. We get callbacks and inversions, which is great because that's our
bread and butter.
Our bread and butter. But Data is acting human.
Yes.
When his usual role in the series, especially when he's on the bridge, is that he's the guy who knows everything and can do everything and dispassionately. But they flipped it on its head.
I like that inversion.
It
starts working for me in this portion of the film.
It's fun. He sort of becomes a liability on the bridge, which is something we've never seen. Well, I'm going to say we've never seen that before. When he's remote controlled by his creator to like sabotage the bridge. That. But that aside,
he was running amok there.
Yeah, he was. That wasn't him at full capacity. Although as Matt Myra said, why they ever let him back on the Enterprise after that, I don't know. But
there should be a real kind of chains on the boat.
Yeah.
For him.
Yeah, he should be instead of hollow chains, he should have literal chains on him. But we get the saucer section separation,
yes,
which is a big deal because it happened for the first time in the pilot episode of TNG, and it was basically the one thing Roddenberry, that was his major ambition for the series, is that he'd always wanted to see the saucer separation, and he'd never had the ability to do it effects-wise, or resources, or money, or anything.
I see.
So it happens here, and it's interesting because it's a tribute to, obviously, Roddenberry's desire for that to happen, but it also capitalizes on parts of the aesthetic that read the best cinematically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's playing both back to the TV show, but also away from it. And I think something that is like feels more like the cinema of the time, particularly the most Spielbergian moment, is when the little girl drops her teddy bear.
Yeah.
As the Enterprise.
It's funny you say that. I had the same note.
Yeah.
I said that bear should be wearing a red coat.
Yeah. And this was one of my favorite things about TNG versus TOS, the major differences. There are families and children on the ship.
Right.
So anytime that ship is in danger of being destroyed, you're talking about hundreds of children being killed. And it reminds me of one of my favorite moments from Lower Decks, the animated Star Trek series. One of the characters is in a holo simulation on the Enterprise, like a Kobayashi Maru. And he sort of says, "Let's do the Janeway maneuver." And then instantly someone's like, "All the children on the ship are dead." With no explanation as to why. But that's basically the kind of jeopardy that the show is always into. So I like that they did that, but they really mined it for that Spielbergian mawkishness.
Yes, absolutely.
They were like, and to show how,
because I was half expecting to see that little girl again, and of course we never do.
Well, yeah, they've got no follow through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Is it's sort of like. At this point, they're just sort of dipping their toes in the world of cinema, right? This movie is all about dipping toes, not actually committing to anything. And it shows how comfortable they've got with the idea of blowing up the Enterprise. That if we first see it blow up in the background of the shot,
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, it's so commonplace now that it's not even in focus. And then they continue to blow it up 3 or 4 times before the end of the film.
As it slams into the ground.
As it crashes and burns, and this is where they're going for the best possible spectacle.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I don't think it looks terrible. I don't think it looks great.
I think
it's somewhere in between.
I think it looks pretty good. I think their instincts are right to sort of push it beyond what was possible within a TV series, which at this point is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a pretty high standard. They have Industrial Light and Magic behind them, even on TV. And focusing on things like crashing into the forest, which you couldn't imagine would be done on the TV show. But it's weird. I mean, we've had 7 seasons with this Enterprise, and it feels less earned than when it happens in Star Trek 3.
Yeah, right.
I guess because it's only one movie well, it's like a third of a movie cinematically.
Sure.
Probably that's why it feels that way. But then it gets very TOS when it's Soren and Picard fighting on some rocks.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this is how every TOS episode ends.
My note was 2 old men fight to no music.
Yeah, I noted that as well. There are a number of moments where there is no music where you think there will be music.
Right, because
especially during the first captain's log, I'm like, if ever there was a time
sure
to like bring in a Star Trek sting.
Yeah.
But no, it's just Patrick.
Well, because
Stewart's
I thought it was
voice.
funny because of course later there's going to be 3 old men fighting, and there is music over that.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what they were saving it for.
I guess.
For maybe that's what their idea of variation is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's interesting given again like the development of Picard as a character, because Patrick Stewart's big note during the run was that he should have more fucking and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And this takes care of at least one of those demands. But also the idea that, you're trying to adapt the character into cinema, so you have him have a fight.
Sure.
I mean,
But
that
I
was
also
definitely
I also have a note that says Picard keeps getting his ass handed to him.
Well, it's not his most natural. That's not, the strengths of his captaincy, and I think
That's
that
true,
is
yeah.
why he's much more successful when Kirk is there as a
As
sort of
a
decoy.
punching surrogate.
Yeah, exactly. And that's we'll get there, but that's a big part of why I like that sequence is that it exemplifies what is distinctive about each of them as Star Trek captains.
Sure.
Whilst giving Shatner one last fight.
Well, and at least in this portion of the film, both Sauron and Picard are going to enter the Nexus.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the planet is going to be destroyed, or existence is what it looks like on screen.
Right.
Has been destroyed.
But it's like they're swept up, and it's it's a pretty striking, and the one shot that I really like is when that moon or whatever the planet that they're on does blow up, and you see the.
But who's this for? In terms of the storytelling, like there's 35 minutes left in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's a time travel storyline, so we don't need this. We don't need to be pandered to like this. I think.
I don't know. It had a different effect on me. I really felt it viscerally. I really felt, wow, everyone on the Enterprise is dead.
Right. You thought they were going to Ewoks Battle for Endor it.
Yeah. Well,
and the rest of the movies would just follow.
Obviously, your cinema brain says we're not staying like this, and we're going to be fine. But
I think it just seemed a little hysterical for. It was a little bit insulting to the intelligence of the viewer, which you notice more in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Because they pride themselves on playing to the intelligence of the viewers, that when they do stupid, like blowing stuff up like this, it doesn't land in quite the same way as it would in a Star War, maybe.
I think. I'll pose it as a question. Do you think it's possible that they show that so that they can juxtapose it against Picard's choice to leave? Not that he sees what happens, but for the audience...
No. Well, that's the problem, isn't
right.
it? It's like, again, the choice is out of his hands as soon as he knew people were in danger.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was pretty sure he was going to lose his own crew if his attempts to thwart Soren failed.
Right.
Yeah, so then Picard's in the Nexus.
Yeah, he's in A Christmas Carol for sure.
He's in a Christmas. He's doing his solo show. There's an exploding Christmas ornament.
There's several. I wrote down a note that said, why am I looking at CGI Christmas ornaments?
Yeah, again, household objects in CGI
Not good.
In the 90s did not look good. And this is interesting because he's in a total fantasy landscape. And he's got this alternate life where he settles down and has a family. And there's an episode where this happens called The Inner Light, where basically, due to sci-fi gobbledygook, Picard ends up living through a whole lifetime and has children and marries, has children and grandchildren, but it all happens in a matter of seconds and only in his mind. But he lives it as if it really happened.
Yeah.
So this seems to once refer to this and forget it ever happened. Yeah. Like as if this is the first time Picard has been through something like this.
Well, maybe.
Which it really isn't.
I mean, I think I referenced it earlier, but I was talking about how Guy had said, I mean, you can't go there because you're never going to leave.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Like you said, I mean, even now, I think we're probably getting towards 25 minutes left in the movie. So he's got a good 5 minutes before he says, "No, I gotta go." I mean, something's weird about this. I must leave.
I think this was like the first time I saw this. I think was on television with commercials, and I remember like checking the time. I was like, I don't know if we're gonna see Captain Kirk again.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I was like, I don't think there's time. It's like, how quickly can they speed up the
credits?
That
was one of the surprises for me, and that led me to earlier say that it felt more for the next generation than TOS because...
Yeah.
Because I forgot how much of the story is for them and how
Yeah.
little Kirk is actually in it.
And it goes back to one of our original examples of Charlton Heston in
Yeah.
Planet of the in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I was close. It was a B word.
You could have said Wayne's World too, for all I knew.
Where he's doing one scene split up into two,
Mm-hmm.
And that's effectively what Kirk is doing here.
Sure.
And here we are. So he's told. Guinan tells him in needlessly vague terms, because we're in the Nexus where nothing makes sense, including the Nexus itself. Yeah. That he needs to go off and meet Kirk to help him get out of the Nexus? Question mark. Which we've sort of been told he can't do, but
see, I think
he needs help.
Yeah,
two men can do.
Right. But I think it's also funny that she never makes the choice. I don't know. She doesn't know Kirk either, so maybe that's why. But
she could conceivably. Well, no, she didn't, because she arrived as he left. Right? Yeah. So she probably never met him. She's met Mark Twain, so she could have met him.
But she's never made the choice to try and get Kirk to leave the Nexus. And
yeah,
I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that the movie is trying to tell us that only these two captains of the Enterprise could have the fortitude to leave the Nexus, except it seems such an easy task.
Yeah. And I mean,
think it, and then you're standing in front of Kirk.
Yeah, it's
right off away from the wife, and you're gonna be back on the planet.
It's all a contrived excuse, so that there can be this historic meeting between the two captains. I mean, it is eerily like that Shatner documentary, The Captains,
mm-hmm.
at this point, which I believe is also, there's lots of like riding horses and chopping wood in that too.
Well, I mean, the second you see the horses, you know for sure those are Shatner's horses.
Of course.
I even read that was his house. Like they came to him. They came to him to shoot
Shatner's
that.
like, I'll do Kirk again, but you have to come to my house. He's pulling a Michael Caine in what was that terrible film? The Christopher Nolan film.
Oh yeah,
Tenet.
Tenet
or whatever. Yeah. Well, so this is in
garbage movie. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember you saying. Still haven't seen it. I remember, the thing that will be said about this is not only is it a contrived excuse to get these two characters together, that it is massively underwhelming when they do. And I only disagree with the first part. I don't find it as underwhelming as some people.
It's not overwhelmingly great, though.
It's not. No, but I like the interplay between them. I like the fact that we see this, even now at the very last second, we're seeing a totally new side of Kirk, which is this domestic goddess version of Kirk, and I think it's really. It's
very weird to.
I love the idea of that Kirk's unlived fantasies are he's a house husband.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm sure Shatner thinks it's like feminist bullshit, but it doesn't show in his performance, right?
No, it doesn't at all, and I think it's very strange to listen to Kirk talk about, well, this was 5 years ago, this was 7 years ago, 11 years ago, I was going to leave Starfleet, and then I decided not to. And there's this little part of me that thinks, oh, I'd like to see that story. I'd like to know more about that.
The day I told her I was going back to Starfleet, and I was just thinking, I mean, it's like... It's
why would you go back? You're clearly at the end of your of everything you're supposed to be doing, even if it was 11 years ago.
And I was also thinking, like, which time?
Yeah, right.
We've seen a lot of you going back to Starfleet. And then, the alien egg preparation. and the toast joke. I think
You love it.
I think it's fun. I think it's really fun in the same way I love the campfire scene in Final Frontier.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just something about.
It's funny you
Kirk
say that,
surrounded
though,
by
but the...
it's Kirk surrounded by wood.
Yeah,
I think,
right.
that I enjoy.
It's funny that you say that, because I always remembered the alien eggs.
And there's this, again, that they're riffing on a scene from TNG where Riker prepares alien scrambled eggs for the crew. And Worf is the only one who likes them, which means that they taste terrible. And it's interesting, like, so this is where it also gets very meta for lots of reasons.
Sure.
But one of them is that, you know, Kirk's arc in the TOS movies is itself a kind of a time loop. He's constantly leaving Starfleet and then coming back and getting promoted
And
then
demoted.
going back to being
But demoted is what he wanted.
So this is almost like a synthesis of what he does in those movies, but in you know, with the sci-fi concept of a time loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that he's in Idaho, not Iowa.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree. Yeah.
Unless Idaho is in Iowa, because I that's not right, is
No,
it?
that is incorrect, sir.
Okay. I realized as I was saying it, I don't want to be a British person not knowing that
Two
Idaho's in
separate
Idaho.
states.
So that's because it's Shatner's house, right? And they didn't feel like pretending it was Iowa.
I guess not. Yeah. Yeah, I get...
And his horses.
Yes.
Um,
Difficult to fake the terrain of Idaho for the flat cornfields of Iowa.
just throw a few, you know, just take out away all.
Didn't
the
he say
potatoes.
something that it was like his brother's place or something like
Yeah,
that?
there's some
Yeah.
terrible workaround for
Some
that.
nonsense.
Which is just awful because he's so associated with Iowa. You know, one of the most famous lines in the series involves Iowa. And then we're just literally watching Shatner and his stunt rider
I'll tell you this, though.
for doing tricks for
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 minutes.
One of the most impressive things I saw in this movie was getting him getting his horse to do that sidestep right up to Picard.
Which they clearly filmed in long shot.
For that
So-
purpose, yeah.
Yeah, so that it's like, if we have any ADR we need to put in somewhere, we'll do it over a shot of Shatner circling with his rescue horse. And I'm not sure what the tone is supposed to be here, but it's very fun, aside from advertising his horse charity, which
Yeah.
we've seen him do elsewhere. But it was very, very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
I like I sort of like the idea, you know, that obviously, you know, they're taking the frontier side of TOS to its extreme by making him ride horses and be this. We first see him chopping wood, like, you know, he's in Shane or something. No, see, I mean that's what they're going for. You know, they're playing that part of the frontier. What I really admire about this sequence, you're right, it's not perfect, it is not, it doesn't strike you as the most as overwhelmingly successful, but there's an exchange of dialogue that I think I'm really glad they did, because it makes it all worthwhile. When Kirk says, "Don't let them promote you," like,
Yeah, I was
think
gonna
that's
say,
a great bit of character writing, because it's like, Kirk, you've seen him go through this, you know, this weird career path back and forth, but you don't know yet that he's learnt anything from it. And him in passing on that advice to Picard, you're finally like, Kirk has learned what he did wrong. He's grown from where he was.
right. He learned that he
love
was
that
fine
moment.
as he was.
Well, yeah, you could read it that way, or you could also read it like, you know, that if you're a natural captain, don't
No, you're
let them
right.
put
Yeah.
you in an office. And it makes this all, you know, if you can take away anything from this scene, it's that. He quotes Spock, which is clearly
Right.
in lieu of Spock appearing in the movie.
Of course.
Kind of verbal surrogacy. And yeah, so and you know, there's when he says, "Who am I to argue with the captain of the Enterprise?" You know, that's
That's
to me
good stuff.
that's the official handing off, right,
Yeah.
of the gauntlet, and it's a very nice moment. I always think in these these kind of crossover moments where you get it a lot in Doctor Who when two different doctors meet, or you know, two big characters in a show meet from different eras. I think one of them has to play the straight man, has to sort of disappear a little bit to let the other one have
Shine, have their moment, yeah.
And Patrick Stewart's really good at doing that,
Mm-hmm.
which goes against what you might think as a trained theatre actor he might be capable of, because mostly what Patrick Stewart does in these scenes is listen.
Yeah, right.
And it's absolutely the right call as an actor, because he knows he's got, I don't know how many more movies
Sure.
to do whatever he wants to do. But he also knows, but Shatner's got, you know, mere minutes left.
This is it, yeah.
And I think that's very clear that Patrick Stewart is not trying to hog the limelight here. And it works. It works.
I didn't think of it in those terms, in sense of the actor himself. I thought of, you know, but I thought of it in terms of choices that they were finally making with the script and with the direction that
I think
made
if you
sense.
Even with the script they have, Patrick Stewart could have overplayed the frustration and annoyance at Kirk.
That's true. Yeah.
At like Kirk not getting what he's laying down in terms of, you know, the urgency of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that he sort of brings that a little bit, and then he just eases off, and it just becomes a nice, relaxed moment.
That's true, but I would counter with the idea that since they're in this fucking nexus, they could leave whenever. It doesn't matter.
Time doesn't matter. There's a great reference to the clock. There's more time travel paradox shenanigans with a clock he gave to Bones.
Yeah, right.
As like is now in the nexus, just as his glasses ended up back in time.
Sure.
So it's like gifts between Bones and Kirk.
Going back and forth within the space-time continuum.
Exactly. I love that idea.
And then we go back.
Yeah, that's it. We see the Enterprise crash again. They get their money's worth from the effects.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They make a compromise.
Montage.
They say we're going to show you maybe 20% of it, 25 max.
Yeah, it's an imbas. You know, they've done
Sure.
a little recap from about 20 minutes ago.
More old men fighting.
Right, and you know, Kirk offers to take care of Sauron, so they've concocted a time loop to give Kirk one more fight.
Yeah.
Before the character dies. And I think so. Putting 1994 William Shatner in a high action sequence is not the best choice. It's also not the worst. It kind of looks okay. Like it gives you those TOS feels. It's like
It gives you the feels, and I'll say this too. I mean, you know, fandom has been giving this series shit for how old the people are when we see them in certain movies or what have you, and we talk about whatever, how heavy the makeup gets and that sort of thing. They couldn't have imagined an HD world. Yeah. But the one thing you also have to concede is Shatner has always looked great for his age.
Yeah,
he's in his 90s now, and you couldn't possibly imagine if you were to look at him that he's in his 90s. Yeah.
You know, he came back. Actually, I shouldn't say he went to space. He came back from space. That was the achievement.
Yeah, right.
Getting up there, as we know.
That's not a problem.
Dogs and monkeys, put anything up there. Getting it back is the trick. You all remember that 1969 headline.
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong returns from the moon.
But at any rate, I think it goes a long way towards helping them in a scene like that.
It doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that bad. And
I'll tell you something else. Yeah. It's a moment where I'm finally on David Carson's side. Like, I think it's really well directed.
Yeah.
And I like, especially when that little bridge separates and it's crunching, and he builds a lot of tension in that moment with the crumbling of the metal and the bending and the twisting. I think it all works really well.
it might not be how you want Captain Kirk and Captain Picard to meet and interact, but if you think about it, the moment where they say we're working together, you've got that they're using their conflicting captaining philosophies to defeat the villain. So Kirk is using his exceptionalism, and Picard is using his sense of teamwork, his ability to rally others, which is what is the center of his ability to captain. So I think it makes conceptual sense. You just don't want to think about. Listen, the rules of the Nexus are so thinly sketched. It's not clear that even this intervention is going to make any difference, right? By their own rules, doing anything within the Nexus should affect nothing.
Right.
But I guess we have to just accept that if they don't let the Nexus open, they'll have never been in it in the first place. I think that's what they're getting at, but it makes no sense because of what the Nexus is conceptually, or how they've drawn it conceptually, because they're in the Nexus. They can't break free of the Nexus when they're in the Nexus.
Unless they just decide to.
Right. So it's, you don't want to think about it too much, but for the sake of seeing Kirk and Picard working together in a way that is a logical extrapolation of their captaincies, I think it's good. And I like that Kirk gets his death scene. The film was teasing it from minute one.
Sure. Is it satisfying for you?
We deserve to wallow in it. I like that it's Kirk / Shatner when he calls Picard the captain of the Enterprise. He comes to term with the transition as he dies, which is like, it's the nail in the coffin of the TOS era. And it's all of Shat. I think it's
full Shatner. I mean, you get It was fun, and he's looking.
But
I read a note that he was not looking at Patrick Stewart, but at some airplane that was flying over his shoulder. And when I read that and watched the movie, I thought that makes complete sense.
Yeah. But then, I love that.
I actually read that the "Oh my" was an improv.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think he heard George Takei was formulating it as a catchphrase and wanted to scoop him. But I like it. I love the brevity and the way it's acted. Like, it's clear that he's like, he knows he's dying.
Yeah.
Or he's seen heaven or whatever. Like, it's very clear what's going on. It's just a bit eerie retrospectively because that is what George Takei says. I don't understand why he has an admiral on his badge. I presume A stands for admiral, right?
Oh.
He's not an admiral.
No, yeah.
I mean, maybe they gave him maybe he retired on an admiral's pension, so I don't know. And
it automatically changes in the Nexus?
Or when he was, I don't know, from the point he came out of the Nexus, I guess he could have been an admiral.
There you go. Before
he went rogue, maybe. But that doesn't make a lick of sense. And and then they put the badge on the rocks and rocks and the
rocks over body as a gravesite.
Yeah, rocks and the insignia is like two icons of the TOS era. Bunch of rocks and those badges.
Yeah.
And then we have a captain's log that fills in all the messy exposition left over.
Sure.
Which is what the captain's log is there to do. And then he and Picard and Riker sum up the episode.
The theme.
No, sum up the episode. They wrap it up as they would any episode of TNG. That is a moment where they forget that they're not writing.
Well, I just like that Picard had a line that says, "Cherish every moment because they will never come again." Unless you're in the fucking Nexus.
At least they make it clear that it's hard to get into the Nexus, I suppose.
That's
you
true.
have to endanger a lot of lives to get there.
I mean, Sauron, he had to, you know, he had to go the 78 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Good job. He's kind of immortal.
Right.
And then we also get the wrap up of the emotion chip storyline, which is good because it shows change and development for Data.
Yeah.
That this story has gone somewhere. I'm pretty sure, without having seen them recently, that this is walked back and forth in the future movies.
Really?
Also, the downside of this scene is I don't think it was.
I think I've seen except for First Contact. The other two,
I think there's a lot of I'm going to put my emotion chip.
I have
in,
not
I'm gonna
seen a
take
lot
it
of the
out.
other two. Yeah, right.
I don't think this was meant to be him and Troy. I think this is meant to be him and Geordie. This does not sound like Troy. This does not sound like someone who's been Data's psychiatrist for 7 years. She's asking him questions that she would definitely know the answer to. And then there's a really, this one of the sweetest moments in the film with Spot the Cat. Spot the Cat is still alive.
Yeah.
And Picard talks about casualties, but as far as I can tell, everyone lived except the Enterprise itself.
Yeah.
Which, as we know, they have no problem destroying at any given moment.
whenever it strikes them.
And they tease a new Enterprise for the following
Of
films.
course.
Unfortunately, they really lose out on that final shot, which is just like other spaceships going to warp. I'm like, You really missed the Enterprise there. If you're going to blow up the Enterprise, don't immediately follow it with a shot that reminds you that the Enterprise isn't there.
Yeah, but it also, it felt, those ships looked like the models of things we've already seen, Reliant or... from original series shit,
Yeah, I bet they have significance. I'm just not willing to go on Memory Alpha and find out what they are. Because everything does. Everything has an extra meaning because it's been going on for so long.
I mean,
they're all nerds. So.
Well, I'm at the end of my notes.
Yeah, that's it. The final words, they're all nerds. Yeah,
but it's weird...
It's a very strange ending, yeah. It's like it's an ending of an episode, not a film, and then a shot at the end that's supposed to convey something that I don't think it conveys.
Doesn't do that, I don't think.
Yeah, because we've just blown up the up the film's major character.
At least part of the Enterprise.
But then why does it not? I guess why does it not feel like that at the end of Search of Spock again? Like, is it just?
Mm-hmm.
I guess because we get Spock back, but here we get Spock back. That's pretty good. If you were a TNG fan, you'd be worried that was the end of Spock.
All right. You know more from the series.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's like it's Data's longest relationship with any other creature, him and Spot, and he learns to be human through becoming a pet owner. So the idea that he can emotionally react to Spot being alive is kind of in its own way a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's reminding me now because I think I had spoken to the wedging in of stories, and you had said that the emotional chip. I mean, it was his character had gone to great lengths to be more than just the android that he is.
But not that far, crucially. Like in TNG,
all of that makes sense. I think where I got stuck was the idea of he pushes somebody in as who is it? He pushes into the water.
So
it's that. It was that portion.
Crusher.
Yeah. It was that portion of the story
nothing
where
to do in this film.
Where we don't even see her be mad at him, but someone else tells him that they're mad, and the next thing you know, he's like, "This is the next obvious choice. Put this in my head."
Yeah, they do Beverly a real disservice here.
Right. Do her dirty.
They prepared to ogle her and then have a couple of Klingons talk shit about her.
Right.
But that's it. That's the limits of what you can do in the movie. So it isn't really tracked particularly well. So I'm into credit checks.
Credit check me.
Military style credits, putting the cast into ranks and divisions, the
Right.
aliens, the Nexus. Trying to rationalize this mess of a movie. Trying to make you feel like it was all planned. I was interested to Ronald B. Moore, one of the writers, and famously went on to do Battlestar Galactica and Outlander and some pretty big, as well as Deep Space Nine and one episode of Voyager before he went, fuck this. That's true story. He supervised the visual effects, which I think is fascinating. They were obviously the writer would have such a close relationship with the people doing the effects. And
yeah, that is strange.
I think I remember reading something similar about Battlestar Galactica. The reason the effects were so good on that show wasn't necessarily about pushing the boundaries of the technology, but that Ronald B. Moore was kind of writing the effects into the script.
Gotcha.
Shatner gets his own makeup person.
Of course he does.
But not hairstylist. Which to me is a tacit admission that both leads of the film are bald.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's because it's been stapled on.
Yeah. head hair stapler. George Takei.
Yeah.
And James Doohan. And
yeah.
Nichelle Nichols.
Those, if I may say, those staples are awfully long.
Couple of companies involved in the movie. Home on the Range Caterers.
That was for Shatner. Lots of grilled meat.
That's just what he calls his kitchen.
Yeah.
So he can write it off on his taxes. The cat Spot the Cat is by Critters of the Cinema.
All right.
I love these company names, but they do pose a lot of questions, which they do not answer. Miniature Crash Sequence Photography Unit is an incredibly dramatic and also specific unit to be a part of. I would love to be able to tell people I was part of that unit. Public Missiles Limited are thanked here, which is the Johnny Rotten spin-off group that never saw the light of day. Yeah, that's all I have. That's the end of my credit check.
All right.
And that's the end of Kirk, the end of my credit check.
Yeah. He finally never came back.
Well, I mean, you know that there are novels which Shatner
Sure.
claims he wrote where he brings himself back to life, but I don't think they're considered even remotely canon. Even in the murky canonical realms
The
of
murky
Star Trek.
underworld.
Yeah. Even in Memory Beta, as it's known, I don't think they're even considered part of that.
Well, there we have it. We that's the 200th episode.
Yeah.
Good on us, I say.
Yeah, I think it was a really good choice.
That's fun.
Yeah, and I enjoyed, obviously I enjoyed watching it again.
I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to.
Oh, good.
Because I remember disliking it when I first saw it. And like you had said earlier, it kind of did give me the warm. It does give me
It's
the warm and
comforting.
fuzzies. It's still Star Trek.
Yeah, it's like a it's a TOS comfort blanket to get
Yeah.
you into the TNG era, and I respect that, even though it's entirely unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
For
Even though it's entirely unnecessary and it's not always successful, and I'm
put that on your poster.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm still calling it a bad movie, but it's barely for me, and it's it's not one that I dislike like when I first saw it. There's more there than I think I gave it credit for when I first saw it.
Be interesting to see if there are any other sequels like this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any.
I can't think
off
of
the top
anything
of my head
offhand,
where,
but
I suppose you could say something similar going on in Force Awakens. Phasing one cast out, phasing one in.
Yeah, maybe.
But not.
It doesn't feel as deliberate as this does, though.
No, it's not like it was 2 weeks after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's true. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to tell us what you think of Star Trek Generations. Yay or nay, fan or no fan. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Fan dance or no fan dance?
You weren't going to let that pass.
No, couldn't.
Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next, we'll be talking about the next 100 episodes.
Yay!
Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
Captain, is there something wrong with your chair? Scotty's got all the zingers.
He's got
basic-
plenty of fuck yous.
He thinks he's at the roast of William Shatner. That's what he thinks is going on.
It's the only way they got him in the building.